3 years ago, my marriage ended and he took everything. Not just the house, not just the savings. He took the life I built with my own hands and left me with silence. My name is Brooke. I'm 37 now. I used to believe in partnership, in building a life together, brick by brick. But standing in court that afternoon, listening to the judge hand over the house I designed to the man who cheated on me, I realized one thing. No one was coming to save me. His name is Scott. We were married for 9 years. 9 years of birthday dinners, business parties, renovations, compromise. 9 years of putting his career first because it's just a tough season right now, babe. And I believed him every time. I had my own interior design studio when we met, small but promising. I put it on hold when he was promoted, and we moved across the state. Then again when he wanted to pursue an executive MBA. Then again when he started traveling more and needed me to manage everything at home. He promised, when things settle down, it'll be your turn. Turns out things never settle when the person you're waiting on already made up his mind. And apparently, it had been her turn for a while. I found out about the affair on a Saturday. I'd come home early from a short trip with my sister. His car was in the driveway. There was music playing. And there she was, curled up on our couch, in one of my silk robes, drinking the Cabernet I'd been saving. She didn't even look surprised. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked around at the home I had poured my soul into and walked out the front door. The divorce was fast, efficient, cold. He already had a lawyer, already had joint ownership claims ready. Apparently, while I was decorating, he was preparing. The judge sided with him on almost everything. I made less income. I chose to pause my career. He kept the house, the car, most of the savings. I got a lump sum that barely covered 6 months of rent. But the part that truly gutted me was the house. That house was mine. I chose the paint colors. I ran cables through the walls for hidden lighting. I laid out every square foot with care, warmth, and vision. It was my work, my identity. And now it was theirs. I moved into a tired rental across town, the kind with peeling laminate floors and yellow light bulbs. I ate instant noodles, ignored texts. I stayed off social media because seeing pictures of my kitchen with new faces in it was a special kind of hell. I broke down exactly once, then never again. Because one night I drove past that old house, and what I saw shifted something inside me. The new porch lights were cold white. The flower beds were gone. My lavender bushes dug up. There was a cheesy Live Laugh Love decal stuck to the front window. And suddenly I realized something simple and sharp. He took the house. But he couldn't keep the soul. He could live there. He could host his little barbecues. But it would always be a shell of what I made it. And that night, as I sat parked across the street, an idea rooted itself so deep in my mind, I could feel it in my bones. I wouldn't fight to get the house back. No, I would buy the one next door, and I would make it everything that house used to be and more. Better, smarter, stronger. A mirror, yes, but one that reflected who I had become. And I wouldn't need to say a word, because living well next door would speak louder than anything I could ever shout. It started with late-night drives. I'd circle the neighborhood windows down music off. Sometimes I'd park 2 blocks away and just walk past it. My old home, his new kingdom. Their perfect little slice of stolen comfort. But I didn't linger on them for long. My focus shifted just to the left. The house next door. It wasn't much, not at first glance. Worn shutters, faded siding, a porch with a missing railing. The grass hadn't been mowed in months, and the mailbox leaned like it had given up decades ago. But I saw it. Beneath the decay, I saw the lines, the bones. It was the same model as our old house, same layout, same lot size. Built in the same year by the same developer. It was perfect. I didn't care that it smelled like mildew when I stepped inside, or that the wallpaper peeled like old skin. I didn't flinch at the cracked foundation or the broken windows. I walked through that empty shell with a quiet calm. Because where most people saw a mess, I saw a blueprint, a mirror. a chance to rebuild on my own terms. The house had been sitting on the market for months. Scott had no idea, and I planned to keep it that way. I contacted the realtor using a different last name, paid in cash using the business savings I'd hidden before the divorce, made sure nothing tied me to the purchase just in case. When the paperwork was finalized, I sat in the middle of the gutted living room legs, crossed on the dusty hardwood, and exhaled. Not in victory, not yet, but in certainty. He had taken everything. Now I was taking space. Over the next few weeks, I showed up every morning in paint-stained jeans and a hoodie. No makeup, no drama, no noise. Just me, my blueprints, and the silence. I kept the blinds drawn, the contractors minimal. Did as much of the demo myself as I could. I pulled down ceilings, hauled broken tile. I scrubbed years of neglect from every corner of that house, and with each swing of the hammer, something inside me shifted. I didn't feel like the woman he left behind anymore. I felt like someone he wouldn't recognize if he saw me now. I kept to myself, didn't talk to neighbors, didn't answer when his girlfriend waved from their porch one morning. But sometimes when I caught a glimpse of them out front, laughing, arguing, watering the roses I planted years ago, I'd allow myself a small smile. Not out of bitterness, out of patience. Because they didn't know what was coming. Didn't realize that behind the boarded windows next door, a masterpiece was forming. Not just a house, a message. A message that didn't need to be spoken. It wasn't revenge I was after. It was reflection. I wanted them to look out their kitchen window and see the silhouette of what they thought they'd stolen only better. Cleaner lines, brighter light, warmer wood. A home that looked like everything they had, and yet felt like everything they couldn't touch. And so I worked. Day after day, night after night. I reimagined every room, not just to match the house I lost, but to surpass it. I installed hidden storage in the walls. Designed a kitchen that flowed like water. I hand-picked each tile for the bathroom, chose light fixtures that cast long, soft shadows like moonlight. It was my art, my revenge, my healing, and all the while, he had no idea. Until one day his car slowed down in front of my driveway. He didn't recognize me at first. I was standing on the porch clipboard, in hand directing 2 installers, wearing sunglasses, hair pulled back, calm, collected. He squinted, then looked away, then back again. Our eyes met. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. He drove off. But I knew in that moment he'd felt it. The shift, the unease, the question creeping into his mind. Who lives next door now? And that was only the beginning. After that brief moment, our eyes meeting across driveways, I knew he had questions. But I also knew him well enough to understand he wouldn't ask. Not directly. Scott never liked looking too closely at things that made him uncomfortable. And that worked perfectly in my favor, because the house was almost ready. And I was nowhere near done. Every decision I made during the remodel was deliberate, calculated. I didn't just rebuild what he stole, I upgraded it. The kitchen in our old house had marble countertops. I chose quartzite, more durable, more elegant, less common. He had stuck with chrome fixtures. I went with brushed gold. In the master bedroom, I placed the bed facing east, just like before. Except now the sunrise spilled across floors. I had sanded myself wide oak planks that felt warm under bare feet. Every time I placed something in the new house, I thought about its twin version sitting one wall away. And I smiled, because I wasn't copying. I was correcting. No shortcuts, no compromises. The guest bathroom they never finished. I turned mine into a spa sanctuary, heated floors. Matte black fixtures, a rainfall shower that felt like peace. The backyard they never landscaped. I hired a small team to build a stone patio, hung string lights and filled the planters with fresh lavender. The same lavender he ripped out when she said it made her allergies flare. I didn't just rebuild the house, I restored the woman who once lived in it. Piece by piece, quietly. There were moments I felt tired. Not physically, emotionally, like I was grieving something I never got to properly bury. But then I'd look across the fence, see her in my garden, or hear them laughing on my porch, and I'd remember this wasn't grief, this was reclamation. And then came the final touch. I found a small local artist, someone who created minimalist metal sculptures for entryways. I commissioned a piece in brushed steel, just a single word, still. It was the last thing I hung on the wall beside my front door. Subtle, elegant, poetic, still here, still standing, still everything you thought I'd never be without you. When the house was done, I held a small gathering. Not a party, just a quiet celebration. Close friends, a few clients, my sister, people who had stayed when everything else fell apart. I made sure it was tasteful, no loud music, just soft jazz wine, flickering candles, laughter flowing out gently from my open windows. I saw the porch light flick on next door. I knew he could hear us. He didn't come over. Of course not. But at one point I caught a glimpse of him through the blinds, standing in the dark kitchen, holding a drink, not moving. I imagined the questions running through his mind. Who was I now? What was this house? Why did it feel so familiar? He would never ask, and I would never offer answers. Because the best revenge is presence. It's existing so beautifully, so completely right beside the person who tried to erase you that every breath you take becomes a reminder of what they lost. And that night, as I stood on my porch and toasted the people who truly saw me, I knew one thing for sure: I didn't need to win him back. I didn't need to explain. I didn't even need closure. I had architecture, I had vision, I had silence, and next door, he had noise. The Monday after the gathering, I was sipping coffee on the porch. Same mug I'd always used, the one with the chip on the handle when the mail truck pulled up. Nothing unusual, until I noticed Scott step outside, looking distracted. He picked up a few envelopes, paused, then turned his head. Just slightly, just enough for our eyes to meet again. I nodded, polite. He didn't nod back. He looked away fast, almost guilty, like he'd been caught staring at something he wasn't supposed to want. That was the thing about Scott. He never truly noticed something until it threatened his sense of control. When we were married, he barely glanced at the garden. Now he stood there for a full minute, just looking at the fresh lavender spilling over my fence. I didn't wave, I didn't smile, I simply went back inside. And yet from that day on, little things began to happen. First, his girlfriend Tara started changing their front porch decor. I recognized it immediately. The same ceramic planters I'd used years ago, the same eucalyptus wreath I once made by hand. I hadn't posted any of it online, so either she remembered from before, or someone was trying to recreate what I had without knowing how. Then came the calls. Former neighbors, old mutual friends, even one of Scott's ex-colleagues. All curious, all circling back, with the same question wrapped in small talk. So you really did all that by yourself? And every time I smiled, not because they finally saw me, but because their surprise was the compliment. Apparently word was getting around. My little renovation wasn't so little anymore. A real estate blog picked it up after my sister shared some photos. A boutique interiors magazine reached out for an interview. One of my former clients offered to fund a larger studio if I ever wanted to go official again. And just like that, the house I built to heal quietly started speaking louder than I expected. I didn't plan to turn this into a comeback. Honestly, it wasn't about success. It was about space mine. But life has a way of giving momentum to the things you build with clean hands and clear purpose. Meanwhile, next door, cracks were forming. I saw the arguments first, whispered at first, then louder, doors slamming. One evening, I heard Tara shout something about living in someone else's shadow. Another night, the porch light flicked on and off for a full minute, nervous habit maybe. Or just a man who couldn't sleep. And every time I heard the tension spill over, I reminded myself I didn't lift a finger to cause it. That's the thing about people like Scott. They don't understand legacy. They understand possession. He thought taking the house meant taking the meaning. He never realized meaning doesn't live in walls. It lives in the hands that shape them. One afternoon, while reorganizing the entry closet, I found the original floor plans I'd sketched when we first designed our old home. Notes in the margins, a heart drawn next to the master bath label, my handwriting from a time when I still believed forever could be built with blueprints and trust. I stood there holding the pages and smiled. Not with sadness, not with regret, but with clarity. Because that woman who once trusted Scott with her dreams, she's not gone. She's just evolved. And now she signs contracts in her own name. She doesn't wait for permission. She doesn't need the house she lost. Because she built something better right next door. It started with the blinds. One morning I noticed they were always drawn, now tight closed, like someone was trying to block out more than just sunlight. Then the porch, once cluttered with Tara's Pinterest-inspired flower pots, was bare. No candles, no wreath, no faux fur throws, just silence. The house next door, the one Scott fought so hard to keep, was starting to feel hollow. I didn't look for it, but when you live one wall away, you notice. Especially when that wall used to be yours. Then came the second moment. I was returning from a client consult, arms full of fabric swatches, when I heard footsteps behind me on the driveway. I turned. Scott was standing there, not smiling, not smug, just present. "Hey," he said, like we were neighbors, like we hadn't once signed our names together on a mortgage, on vows on a life. "Hi," I replied simply. He looked at the planters, the brushed steel sculpture that still hung by my door. "I didn't realize you'd kept that old coffee table," he said, gesturing through the window. "The one from your studio days." "I didn't keep it," I said, not looking at him. "I refinished it." He nodded slow, like someone trying to piece together a story they never paid attention to in the first place. There was a pause. Then softly, "The house looks amazing." I let that word hang in the air, not because I needed validation, but because I wanted him to hear the echo of everything he never bothered to notice when it mattered. "Thanks," I said, unlocking the door. "It finally feels like home," and I meant that. Because it wasn't about mimicking the old house anymore. It was about building something that couldn't be taken away, because it came from within me, not from beside him. Scott didn't leave right away. He stood there a moment longer, like he wanted to say something else. But instead he turned and walked back to his house, the one with closed blinds and echoes instead of laughter. A week later, Tara left. Not for the afternoon, not for errands. She left with 2 suitcases, a gym bag, and her face twisted in anger. She didn't slam the door. She didn't look back. She just got in a waiting car and was gone. I don't know what broke them. I never asked. But I had my theories. Maybe it was the weight of living in a space haunted by someone else's design. Maybe it was the silence between them growing louder each day, as our little corner of the street filled with motion, light, and joy again. Or maybe she finally realized what I had learned the hard way: Scott only knows how to take. He doesn't know how to nurture what he's been given. And once it's gone, he panics. Because that's what happened next. He began appearing more, watering plants that didn't exist, sweeping a porch no one used, taking out the trash in perfectly timed intervals when my friends visited, when deliveries arrived, when clients pulled into my driveway to view samples. I never confronted him. But I saw the look in his eyes, recognition, followed by something else, something colder, regret, envy, loss. I didn't care to know, because by then, my focus had shifted. The design studio was thriving. Word-of-mouth referrals kept rolling in. My name, just mine, was now on contracts, invoices, local interviews. For the first time in years, people saw me without the asterisk of someone else's title. Not Scott's wife, not the woman who lost the house, just Brooke. That winter, I was nominated for a regional design award. One of the judges, after touring the house, asked me how I found inspiration. I smiled. Sometimes, I said, you don't find it. You survive something, and inspiration finds you. I didn't win, but it didn't matter. Because that night when I walked out onto my frost-kissed patio, a glass of red in hand, and saw Scott standing alone on his darkened porch next door, I felt it. Stillness, not revenge, not triumph, just the quiet power of knowing I didn't burn anything down. I rebuilt, better, right beside the ruins he created. The first time he knocked, I didn't answer. It was late, not suspiciously late, just unnecessary. I stood by the door, wineglass in hand, and watched the silhouette of him through the frosted window. He waited, maybe 30 seconds, then walked away. I didn't need to ask what he wanted. I already knew. Regret is a quiet visitor. It doesn't come with apologies or flowers. It comes with hesitation, with eyes that don't meet yours, with silences that ache louder than words. The second time he tried the casual route. Hey, just checking in. I saw a moving truck earlier, client, or are you moving? I replied through the door, calm clipped. Client. He mumbled something about how nice it must be to stay busy, then lingered. I said nothing else, because what was there to say? He hadn't just taken the house. He'd taken the version of me who needed him, and I wasn't in the habit of resurrecting ghosts. But Scott was persistent, like most men who mistake proximity for access. One morning I came outside to find him standing at the edge of our driveway's coffee mug in hand, as if this was just another suburban morning, not a scar stitched into two properties. Brooke, he said gently, can we talk? I tilted my head. About what? There was a flicker in his eyes, that same look I'd seen when he was about to negotiate his way out of something. But this time he had no leverage, just memories he never valued when they were real. I guess I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About us, about everything. I was a mess back then. You didn't deserve. Scott, I interrupted not unkindly. You're not wrong, but you're late. He blinked. I didn't soften it. You didn't lose me because you were a mess. You lost me because you made choices, repeatedly. And now you want a conversation because the version of me you thought wouldn't survive, did. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I'm not angry, I added. I'm complete. And I meant it, every syllable. Because for the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of explaining my worth. I wasn't trying to prove that I was more than the woman he walked away from. I was simply me. He stood there for a while, maybe hoping I'd crack. I didn't. Eventually, he turned back toward his door, same slumped shoulders, same tight jaw. But this time, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. That evening, my sister called. You okay? She asked like she always did when the air shifted. I think he thought I'd give him a second chance, I said. And did you want to? I paused, then smiled. No, I just wanted to feel nothing about it. And I did. That night, I lit a candle, played some Nina Simone, and sketched designs for a client's home office. Clean lines, warm tones, a subtle touch of brushed gold. And for the first time in a long, long while, the silence felt like sanctuary, not punishment. Weeks passed. Scott didn't knock again, but he didn't disappear either. Every so often, I'd catch him outside, pretending to trim the hedges, staring too long at my new patio furniture, or pausing just a second too long when he backed out of the driveway. At first, I ignored it. Then I realized he wasn't watching me. He was watching a life that could have been his. Because by then, my home had become more than a remodel. It was alive. People came and went. Clients, friends, collaborators. Music spilled through the windows, fresh flowers lined the entryway, and the scent of good food always lingered in the air. I hosted design workshops in the sunroom. Journalists stopped by for interviews. A young intern, bright-eyed eager, joined me part-time. She reminded me of myself back when I believed love required sacrifice. I didn't say that out loud. I just gave her the best mentorship I could. One Sunday morning, I was out front clipping lavender when I heard the familiar crunch of gravel. Scott's car was still in the driveway, but he wasn't alone. His parents were stepping out slow and uncertain. I hadn't seen them in years. Last I heard, they blamed me for the divorce that I'd given up too easily. I didn't move. They didn't wave. Instead, they looked around, at the house next to mine, the peeling paint, the empty porch, the dried flower beds. Then they looked at mine. Their expressions faltered. Something shifted, and for a split second, I saw it, the realization that maybe their son didn't win, that maybe the woman they dismissed had built something extraordinary. And then the moment passed. They went inside. I went back to my garden. That afternoon, I received a letter, handwritten, from Scott. It wasn't long, just a few lines. I was wrong. About a lot of things. I thought I'd be fine without you. I thought I could replace what we had, but I see now there was no thing to replace. It was you were the home. I read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in the drawer beneath my sink right next to the old house keys I never gave back. Not because I needed to keep it, but because some stories deserve to be tucked away, not burned, not shredded, just shelved. Quietly. Later that week, my intern asked me how I managed to stay so calm when people from before showed up. I smiled. Because I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I don't even need to be remembered. I just need to live in a way that's undeniable. She blinked, then grinned. I want that. You will, I said, once you stop waiting for apologies that never come. That night, I stood by the window, watching the lights flicker on in the house next door. Just one light, just one man, alone. I turned away and walked back to my life, because in the end, I didn't win by tearing him down. I won by rising next to him and building a life so whole, so quietly powerful that he had to look at it every single day. It's funny, really. People think closure comes with final words, a last fight, a dramatic door slam, or some perfectly timed monologue that leaves the other person speechless. But the truth is, real closure isn't loud. It's quiet. It's a calm morning sipping coffee on a patio you designed, in a home you own with nothing but sunlight on your face and peace in your chest. It's when you forget to check if they're watching because you genuinely don't care anymore. It's when their name doesn't sting, their memory doesn't echo, and their choices no longer define yours. That's where I am now. I didn't build a new life to get even. I built it because I finally realized I was never supposed to shrink just to make someone else feel bigger. Scott was a chapter, not the book. And the house. The one he tried to turn into my grave, it became my mirror. A reminder that even when someone steals what you built with love, they can't steal the hands that built it. Not really. Last month, I bought a small commercial space on the other side of town. High ceilings, exposed brick. A little messy but promising. I'm turning it into a design collective for women rebuilding their lives, divorcees, single mothers, late bloomers. People like me. People who were once dismissed, underestimated, talked over. Now they'll have a space to create, to be seen, to build something that no one can take from them. One of them asked me recently, "How did you survive all of it?" I paused, thought about the instant noodles, the silence, the broken version of me that sat in that rental apartment watching her old life through a screen. And I said I stopped trying to get back what I lost. And I started becoming someone who no longer needed it. She nodded, wrote it down. I hope she remembers it, because someday she'll be the one saying it to someone else. And that is the real legacy. Not the magazine features, not the beautiful kitchen, not even the subtle sculpture by my door, but the quiet, steady ripple of a woman who decided to stay standing. Not in spite of the pain, but because of it. And just next door, the man who once thought he won will wake up day after day and be reminded that some women don't burn things down when they're hurt. They just rebuild, brick by brick, right beside you. And they do it better.